Let's discuss a man named Edward Sumner. Ed is a family man with his own successful business and a nice house in an affluent suburb of New York. He has a beautiful wife and a healthy son. It seems Ed has it made. He's living the American dream. But when Ed's wife cheats on him, he is driven to unexpected and extreme bloody violence. Let's discuss the character of Ed in the 2002 thriller Unfaithful. People buy gifts for their spouses. Ed bought a snow globe for his wife, Connie. This is important to mention because this snow globe represents how much Ed loves his family, and even explains his later actions that have horrific consequences. On the surface, it seems like everything is fine in the Sumner household. Ed and his wife are affectionate to each other, and they don't seem to be lacking in romance. Ed buys a new video camera. The couple flirt with each other while Ed uses it. They are about to make love when their son hollers to them, and Ed goes to see what he wants. They both have a good relationship with their son, Charlie, who attends a nice private school. Both parents attend their son's school events. So Ed is not an absent husband or father. He provides for his family and sustains their comfortable life. He provides what is more important than money. He provides his time. When he isn't working, he is home, giving his family attention. He seems like a good man, but even good men are capable of horrendous acts if pushed over the edge. When you spend years living with someone you love, you understand them more than anyone, better than any psychologist or therapist. So when Connie seems increasingly distracted and buys sexy lingerie, Ed notices. Connie's been doing things like washing the same dish repeatedly while seemingly in a trance. She visits Ed unexpectedly at work and says she spoke to a mutual acquaintance at an auction, but when Ed sees the man, he says no, Connie didn't speak to him. Maybe she spoke to his wife instead. Ed doesn't think too much about this until he calls a salon to confirm his wife's appointment, but they tell him that she doesn't have one. Later, Ed confronts an employee over pursuing opportunities with another company. Ed sees this as disloyal and fires him, but being the nice guy Ed is, he says he will write him a letter of recommendation. The employee says he has a family. Ed tells him, "You had a family here." As the employee is leaving, he gets in the last word. "You want to talk to me about family? Take a look at your own family, Ed. Take a look at that." Pretend you're in Ed's shoes. What would be going through your mind after hearing that? Especially if you already have suspicions about your wife. This is the final straw for Ed, and he hires a private investigator to follow Connie. With the PI's new evidence, Ed discovers that Connie has been having an affair with a Frenchman named Paul Martel, a book dealer living in the city. Rather than talk to his wife first, Ed lets on like he doesn't know. Ed goes to confront Paul to his face, an admirable thing for a man to do. Think about the mindset Ed is in. There's a windstorm at the beginning of the film, which is a good deliberate choice of the filmmakers, because there's a metaphorical storm that's been brewing to destroy the life Ed worked so hard to build. Ed has a lot to lose, and losing this would be a major blow to any man. Ed sees Paul's as a threat, and when a man is threatened, the lizard brain takes over, and he becomes primitive like he's on autopilot. The lizard brain came in handy during prehistoric times when there was danger everywhere. But here in the modern world, Ed sees Paul as a threat, a danger to be dealt with. Ed is also hurt and angry can make a man extremely irrational. Ed's first reaction to seeing Paul is that he's younger than he and his wife. He asks to come in and hangs his coat up and looks around. Paul offers him something to drink and Ed asks for vodka. Paul says it's cold because he keeps it in the freezer. Ed says he does too, at home. Ed has a drink of his vodka and asks Paul how he and Connie met. Paul says he helped Connie with her scraped knee after she fell while walking in the storm. Ed remembers his wife telling him about this, a truthful story. So Ed says, "Oh, you're him." He asks Paul if his wife likes his place. Paul says, "I guess she never complained." Let's keep in mind that Ed is close to the edge. So far, the chit-chat seems to be no different than two friends catching up. But when Ed asks Paul if his wife likes this neighborhood, Paul looks at him and gets a dig in when he says, "More exciting than the suburbs, I guess." Ed is exasperated. He tells Paul he and his wife have been married for 11 years and they have a son. Paul looks away as if ashamed. Paul pours them more vodka and Ed says that their son is the reason why they left the city. Connie thought it would be better for him. Paul seems surprised and says Connie told him that moving to the suburbs was Ed's idea. This is another dig at Ed, whether intentional or not. Ed is wounded by those words. Flabbergasted, he asks, "You talk about me?" Paul says nothing and hands him his drink. Ed walks around the apartment some more and looks at the bed with the ruffled sheets, probably pained at the thought of his wife and Paul together there. While in the bedroom, Ed notices the snow globe he bought for Connie. He makes it play music. Paul says he didn't know the globe could do that. Holding the globe, Ed sits on the bed and is visibly distraught. Paul says that Connie bought it for him. Ed says no, Connie didn't buy this for you. I gave it to her. Ed's voice sounds like he's been punched in the gut. He's hurt. Later in the film, it's revealed that there's a hidden compartment in the globe with a handwritten note from Ed. It reads, "To my beautiful wife, the best part of every day." Ed has finally snapped. He starts crying and gasping. He says he feels sick. Even the strongest of men would cry in a situation like this. Think about it. He is overwhelmed by his wife's betrayal. Not only sexual infidelity, but the threat of losing her love, and maybe even being mocked by her. It's said that it's the thought that matters in a gift, and it's obvious Ed put thought into this snow globe, only to have his wife give it away to her lover. Paul asks Ed if he wants some water, but Ed keeps saying he's not feeling well. Ed's not in his right mind, nowhere near composed. He stands up and abruptly grunts and slams the snow globe on top of Paul's head. It seems like he does this one time because it looks like the filmmakers just repeated the first blow to draw our attention to it. Regardless, it's 2 quick slams at the most. Ed's actions have cracked Paul's skull open, and he starts bleeding profusely and collapses and bleeds out on the floor. Now Edward has another problem to deal with. In an attempt to save his family, he cleans up traces of him and his wife being there, or connected to Paul in any way. The phone rings in Paul's apartment, and it's Connie. She leaves a live message on the answering machine. She's crying and saying she can't have the affair anymore. This probably reassures Ed that his wife still loves him. She probably just made a selfish mistake because of human weakness. Ed deletes the message, but Connie's phone number is still written down in the apartment. Ed wraps up Paul's body in a rug and puts it in the trunk of his Mercedes and then hurries to Charlie's school performance. While at the performance, Connie's hand lingers over to her husband's and she affectionately grabs and holds his hand. Ed looks over at her. Later that night, Ed stares at his wife's naked back before heading out to a landfill to dump Paul's body. At breakfast the next morning, Ed is tired and shaken up. He asks Connie if she's happy where they live and if she wants to move back to the city. He says that they can move back if she wants to. Connie replies that of course she's happy, with a tone that attempts to gaslight him, but we know that Ed already knows better. Connie may be happy with her life, but not happy enough. Charlie looks at his father and nods that he's happy too. Ed is riding the train and is bothered by the thought of his actions. His guilt overshadows any fear of being caught. The police later question Connie about Paul's disappearance on 2 occasions. Ed is home during their second visit. At night, Ed breaks down and finally confronts Connie about being unfaithful. He tells her that she threw it all away for a kid. I f***ing hate you. I didn't want to kill him. I wanted to kill you. This sums up Paul's misplaced anger. His lizard brain told him that Paul was the threat, when in reality, Connie's infidelity was the threat. We can hear the built-up hurt and anger in Ed's voice, powerful emotions that were building up since he started to suspect his wife of cheating. This is cathartic for him, and he and Connie could maybe easily move on with their lives if it wasn't for Paul's death. Ed confronting Paul is fine, and ideally, he would have controlled his emotions and left Paul's apartment without hitting Paul. I say hitting because while he did kill Paul, he didn't intend to do so. This is apparent in how shocked he was when Paul collapsed to the floor bleeding to death. Ed also could have divorced his wife, or they could have worked things out. After all, she did regret having the affair, and did seem to feel bad about it. She's not a psychopath. There was some empathy there. Later, the couple are at an event and they dance and embrace and kiss, and they've begun to heal. The film ends with Ed and Connie parked in their car at night, smiling at each other and talking about selling everything and fleeing the country and moving to Mexico. Maybe half serious. Charlie is asleep in the back seat. Then we see that they're parked outside a police station and the film ends. In one version of the film, Ed gets out of the car and walks into the police station, implying that he confessed to everything. In the theatrical ending, it's more ambiguous. Maybe he and his wife were able to keep their dark secret and live happily ever after. Or maybe Ed confesses and goes to prison for manslaughter or second-degree murder, does his time, gets out, and lives a normal life. There's a lot more to say about Connie, but this video is about Ed and what drove him to do what he did. In another video, I'll analyze Connie Sumner and talk about these events from her perspective. My name is Justin Tobin, and thank you for watching. If you are enjoying this content, please consider subscribing because that motivates me to make more content like this.